Do you ever see a new release and you're a little bit tempted, but you're like, it's not a need, it's not a need. And then you see everyone getting it, you start seeing swatches, there's all the excitement, there's all the hype, and you start to have the dreaded FOMO. This is exactly what happened to me with the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude eyeshadow palette. I was like, it's cute. Might I get it at some point? Yes. Do I want to get it at a good discount? Absolutely. And I just thought that I didn't need it. And then now that I've been seeing, you know, a lot of my creator friends, a lot of just general hype over this palette all over social media, and I've been very tempted. But I do feel like I have most of the shades in this palette. And as you know, I've really been striving to use the makeup I have, and when I do decide to bring more makeup into my collection, really see if it, you know, fills a hole, if it is really needed in my collection. So I thought that this was a great opportunity to try to dupe the vibes of this palette. And as all of you know, the Sydney Grace sale, the Sydney Grace Christmas in July sale just ended, and I was kind of like, you know what, this vibe, this color scheme is very Sydney Grace to me. And I was like, I wonder if I could go in and only use my Sydney Grace singles to be able to dupe this eyeshadow palette. So that's exactly what we're doing today. A one brand dupe the vibes, baby. And I feel like I did pretty good. I feel like I did pretty good. So we're gonna dive into this. I will show you all the shades that I have used for this dupe. I will give you swatches. I thought we'd do 1 or 2 looks. We'll see how it's going as we get into this. But if we haven't met before, my name is Kelly and I'm a professional hair and makeup artist. And here on my channel, I strive to keep beauty real. Real honest, real relatable, and real fun. So if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. We're gonna get into this. Like I said, this was partially for me to just be able to see if this is a palette that I need in my collection, if I feel like I definitely have it already, and I'm hoping that it maybe helps you. Either it might help you decide if you have these shades in your collection, or if you do really want to get the palette. And also part of the reasons why I'm doing the looks is to just sort of give you some inspo, whether it's to use the Natasha Denona palette, whether it's to use some of the Sydney Grace shades that I have in this palette. So hopefully you find this helpful. All right, are you ready to see the palette? I'm going to zoom you in a little bit. Like I said, we're going to get all the details going and eventually some eyeshadow on my Fiji. All right, so first of all, I do want to just give a little chit chat about the Natasha Denona palette. So obviously the I Need a Nude eyeshadow palette is one of the midi palettes. It's $69 at full price. And on the brand website, it says it is a cool toned color story featuring 15 new enchanting muted, rosy, and nude shades. Alongside Natasha's iconic formulas, the I Need a Nude palette debuts a brand new wet effect sparkling and glossy finish formula, illuminating any eyeshadow look with an ethereal touch of glistening sparkle. So obviously that is one thing about my dupe here is I'm not going to have the multiple formulas. Really here we have Sydney Grace's well-known matte and shimmer formula. So that is going to be one thing, is we aren't going to have nearly as many formulas. So really this is about the color story and the vibes, right? We're duping the vibes here today. All right. So as we get into this, I will say partway through this, I almost wanted to give up just because the difference between the brand swatches, the difference between creator swatches that I went and kind of looked up, it's been all over the place. And like then the description of the shades from the brand. So I kind of did a little bit of everything, to be honest. I used sort of the swatches from Natasha Denona, both on Instagram and then on the YouTube video of like live swatches, if you will. And also, like I said, some creator swatches, the descriptions, all of it. And it's just also different. I was like, okay, I think it also does make a difference who is swatching it, what skin tone you are starting on. So for those of you that are new to my channel, you can probably see since I'm wearing white today, I do have a neutral leaning warm skin tone with more of like an olive undertone. And so please keep that in mind if you are doing a little research for yourself. You really do need to be aware of, you know, someone's undertones. Also, I think like white balance, all of those things, like it just really makes a difference. If you've ever taken a picture on your, especially for people who use their phones, which is, that's not like a diss at all. I use my phone a lot for content, but the white balance can really get off on that. And so I think a lot of times things look quite a bit warmer than they are in person. All right, that's that. Now, I'm gonna show you my palette here. So here are the shades that I have, and again, this is all Sydney Grace shades, a couple of these, mostly the taupes. A couple of these look so different in the swatches, so keep an eye out for that, because as I was going through and I was like looking for taupey shades, as I was swatching, I was like, wow, these look totally different. And that is one thing that I think about some of the Sydney Grace mattes, is they do swatch a little deeper, more saturated, although I think Natasha Denona does the same with some of the creamy formulas. So without further ado, let's go ahead and swatch these out. You'll have to let me know down below how you think I did on this. It is not an exact by any means. It is not an exact. And I will also say that all of these are individual singles except for one. I did cheat and I did pull out one shade from a palette that a lot of you might have picked up in the Sydney Grace Christmas and July sale. So I had to do that. I do think I also have one shade that I'm sort of missing, but I filled it in with something as close as I could get. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. I'm gonna get my magnet so you can see these up close. Okay, so as I go through and do these swatches, I am not sure how to do this so that all of you can see comparisons, because it's super annoying. These swatches from Natasha Denona are not in order. They're not in order of the rows of the palette. I honestly think that what they did is they tried to split things up a little bit so that some of the shades that are a bit close aren't next to each other, because I do think that there is some similarity. Maybe the formula is a bit different, you know, maybe one is like a little bit more of a topper, it's maybe a little bit more sheer, but there are some shades that are kind of close. And so I'm like, why did they do these out of order? That just seems really weird. Both on the Instagram photo with the 3 different skin tones and in the video, they're just like not the same. So I think what I'm gonna do is just do in order, which is exactly how I laid them in here, in order of duping the shades as they sit in the palette. And then I will give you the description that the brand gave as well. That's just the way that I'm gonna do it. If I'm feeling super extra, I might go ahead and do it in order of the arm swatches that are on Instagram, but I have a feeling I won't do that. Sorry, we'll see. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first shade in the palette is the shade Stone, and this shade is listed as a matte light medium warm taupe. And I'm not going to say Sydney Grace, because obviously every single one of these shades is Sydney Grace. So I've chosen the shade Relax. This again is definitely, you know, more of a taupe shade. I will say I feel like this is definitely a shade that really swatches very different than it looks. This I would say is, you know, I think that there's 2 like matte taupes in here, and one to my eye definitely leans a little bit warmer than the other one. So this is the warmer of the 2. I'm gonna try to get all of these on my arm. We'll see how we can do here. And like I said, I also think that the Sydney Grace mattes, they definitely can perform deeper on the skin than they look in the pan. And of course, I will give you up close swatches at the end. So then the next shade in the palette is Whisper, and Whisper is described as a metallic light nude pink. And this is a shade I'm very excited because I just picked this one up in the sale, and I know it's a really popular one, so I chose the shade Turtledoves. The reason I chose Turtledoves is it does lean a little bit pink, but it's not as pink as some are. It does have that little bit of nude to it. Oh my gosh, I am definitely gonna need makeup wipes. We will get there when it's needed. Now, the next shade is Elia, and this one is described as Sparkling Foiled Warm Fawn. So for this shade, I chose the shade Kite Flying. And some of these might not be available anymore because some of them were probably in mystery bags from, you know, previous Sydney Grace sales or from this last one. And I think that this might have been in the latte bag this year. I think this one is from this year. It's very, very pretty. So this is definitely something like right up my alley. I think this sort of like lives in that like sort of brown, but sort of pink, like a brownie pink. That is really beautiful. I cannot wait to use this one. And then for our next shade, we have Vague. Vague is described as a matte, medium, warm, dusty rose. Sorry that I'm not keeping eye contact with all you. I have to keep flipping back and forth between the picture of the palette and the description of the shadows, since again, they're not in order. This is the shade Together Forever. Very pretty, definitely in that you know, Dusty Rose. So this one is a bit warmer than the other Dusty Rose. There are two in the palette that are described as a Dusty Rose, but this one to me has a little bit more warmth and neutrality. It is also a little bit deeper if I selected them right. I maybe could have even gone a bit warmer there, but at some point I just had to be like, this is close. It's closest, Kelly. So we're just going with it. So a little story time as I'm wiping my fingers off here. As I was doing this, I was sitting on the floor back here and I had my palettes open and I was like, first of all, why did I wear a white t-shirt? I don't know. I was on the floor. I had swatches all over, like not just on my fingers, but all over my hands, everywhere, and a big spider came running across the floor and like right up to me, and I was like, ah, but I was also like, don't touch the carpet, don't touch anything, you're covered in shadow. It was chaos, but I survived. The spider did not. Okay, fun story. So the next one is Travertine, and Travertine is listed as a metallic soft amber. So this, for instance, this one is the first shade swatched on the arms, I believe, but it is obviously 5 in. I just thought this was really interesting. So this one, I'm not sure how I did with this one. That was one of those shades that I kept looking at the swatch, but I think I did okay. It definitely dupes the vibes. This is the shade Buttercake, and I am pretty darn sure I got this one in this year's mystery bags. So hopefully some of you are watching and have mystery bags as well, and you can dupe the vibes right alongside me. So Buttercake is a bit warmer, and it definitely has more of that, like, you know, goldeny brown. I don't know. It's like that interesting mix of like, I don't know. It's like taupey. It's a little bit warmer, but it's not like gold. I really like this one. Regardless of whether it's like a super close dupe, I do really like it. So then our next shade in the palette, we're moving into the second row. So here we have Delilah, and Delilah is described as a sparkling wet effect silver brown. So this is one of those new formulas. I think we might have had two. I could be wrong, but this is the one shade. This is the one shade that I cheated on. Let me see here. And this is from the Love's Journey palette. So this is the shade Lovesick. So it's the one that's in the center of that top row. And I just needed something. I don't lean into, you know, super cool shades. And so I just found that everything that I had was either more cool, like into like taupey purple, or it was like more on the neutral to warm side. So I just pulled out Lovesick. I felt like it was like the closest I could get, and I'm excited because I actually haven't used Love's Journey yet. I think I'm gonna do a multiple looks video, maybe soon. I'm gonna do it soon. No promises as to when. So here you can see it definitely is quite a bit cooler. Hopefully you can see. We're obviously working with some nude shades on my skin, but this one is definitely, this one's actually almost like a little rosier, but it's given me the vibes. It's given me the vibes of what I saw in the swatches. What can I say? And then now we are going to move into the shade Silhouette. So this is such a beautiful shade. It's very interesting though, because in the brand swatches, it is really high impact, like the deepest of the deep. And I don't know if it's just the swatches that I've seen. Some of the swatches have come up quite a bit lighter. I don't know if people just are like doing lighter swatches, or if the brand just did a ridiculously heavy swatch, or if it's somewhere in the middle. But the shade that I chose is Big Bear, and Silhouette is described as a matte coffee bean brown. I think that this is pretty good. It's a beautiful shade. This one might actually also be from a mystery bag this year. Wow, I'm loving this because I am definitely going to keep this palette out for a while and, you know, kind of enjoy using this to be able to see how I feel about this palette. Boy, I think I did a pretty good job here. So again, this is the shade Big Bear. All right, moving into the next shade, which is Muse. And Muse is described as a sparkling foiled champagne. Oh, y'all, all of these like nuanced nudes, especially because I only have one formula to work here with, right? I mean, I could have gone into all of the brands that I have, but you know, from Sydney Grace, I'm working with one. And so I was swatching and comparing and like, which one's more pink, which one's more nude, which one's more champagne. hopefully I did a pretty good job. So this is the shade Versailles. And this is, I would say it's not overly pink, but it's also not gold, which to me is sort of like champagne-y. So this one, again, is to dupe out Muse. I actually, when I saw swatches, I was like, actually, I think this is pretty close. I do think that Muse, let's see, what is the formula on that one? A sparkling foiled. I think that this is one of the ones that I felt like had a little bit of like a duochromatic feel. So I doubt it's going to be like a dead ringer, but it sure is beautiful. Now we're going to move into Fair. And Fair is one of those shades that I think that not everyone is going to be able to use in this palette because it is so light. It is described as a matte, light, misty rose. So for this shade, I chose Peanut Butter Cookie. Again, I think this is one that I got either in my mystery bag or as a free shade. So I think, again, this is, to me, in the palette, I feel like it looks like a nude that has a bit of, you know, rosy tone to it. And I think that Peanut Butter Cookie is going to be a good one, which is really interesting because when you think peanut butter, you think warmer. But on my skin tone anyway, this definitely has a little bit of that rosy tone. I'm going to try to build this one up just so that you can see the tonality of it more. So this one is right here. You might not be able to see it that far away. Love my little bruise here. I don't even know what that's from. But I can see that it's a little bit cooler, like it's a little bit more dusty rosy on my skin tone. But if it like blends into my skin, I think there's going to be a lot of skin that is too deep to really wear this that much. All right, so then moving into the shade Filigree. This was another one that I was like, oh, I just don't know if I have like the shade. But this one, I think once it's swatched out, it's a pretty close match. This is the shade Coliseum. And this is one of the shades from Sydney Grace. I think in the pan, it's going to look quite a bit different because it's one of those shades that's a little bit, for lack of a better term, maybe like mottled. Like when I look at it, it is a brown with a little bit of like a rosy fleck to it, but that all kind of combines when you know, swirl your finger in. And so to me, it just becomes like a really nice brown with some dimension. And I wanted to try to get something that was a little bit more dimensional into this palette just because we do have, you know, obviously the new formulas from Natasha Denona, not that it's like the same at all. Wow, I'm really making a mess here. I'm gonna like wipe that off. So that right there is the shade Coliseum. And again, that's meant to replace Filigree. All right, so moving into the last row, we have the shade Wit. Is that right? Wit? Yes, Wit. And Wit is described as a matte, light, warm rose. So this is, I would say, the warmest out of all three of the, you know, more rosy shades. I have chosen the shade Satin Band. So it's definitely a warm rose. This is what makes me want this palette, is the fact that we've got, you know, some cooler neutrals, but to me, this has just enough of that rose, just enough of what honestly I would say is a bit of a peach feel to it, that I feel like it's something that I would actually use quite a bit. So this is to replace the shade Wit. You can see that there. I'll give it one more swatch here as we're getting down. I'm very proud of myself for being able to get this whole darn thing on my arm. I'm so sorry about the bruise. I don't know what that's from. Our next shade is one of the new formulas, I believe. This is the Glossy Wet formula. So sheen is described as a glossy wet effect warm champagne. Obviously, I don't have that formula, but I did think that Blushed, which is one of my absolute favorite shades from Sydney Grace, definitely in my top 10. I thought that this would be a pretty good rival, if you will, a pretty good dupe. So this is just such a pretty shade. Go ahead and pop this right here. This is just such a beautiful, now this might be just a little bit leaning more rosy, but I personally, like, this says warm champagne. Although this does have a little bit of warmth to it, in my opinion. When I saw the swatches, I was like, it actually does have quite a bit of warmth to it. So that's why I went ahead with that one. So moving into our last two mattes. The first one is Tender, and Tender is described as a matte medium taupe. And this, I used the shade Relax. Okay, Kelly from the future in a couple minutes. I just realized that I have this color in here twice because I have it in my collection twice because I have it one in Mel's bundle and one in my own personal collection. So we're gonna swap this out for another shade. How ridiculous. All right, so I'm replacing this with the shade Enjoy the Ride. I'll show you it right here. How ridiculous. So this is to replace the shade Tender, which is listed as a matte medium taupe. All right, our last matte is the shade Mesh. And Mesh is described as a matte light dusty rose. So this is the lightest and, you know, more of the cooler dusty roses in this palette. So for this shade, I chose the shade Horseback Riding. And I'll go ahead and give us... Ooh, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. So this is definitely, like I said, it's the coolest of the, you know, more like rosy shades. Why is that? Like, I think it's over my bone. It's doing a little weird thing here. So you can see how much cooler that one is. And then our last one is a sparkling wet formula. And this is Mia, and it is described as an icy pink. And truly it is quite pink. Like from what I've seen in, you know, creator swatches, this one does have quite a bit more pink. I don't think that in the brand swatches, let me actually go over to those. I don't feel like it shows up like quite as pink as it does in, you know, the swatches that I've seen creators doing so far. Oh, that's really close. Well, we're working in a complicated area here. Okay, so did I say which one this was? I didn't even say which one it is. This is Blondie, and this is actually one, again, this is one of the few shades, the singles that I purchased in the Sydney Grace sale. So Blondie is definitely, I think I got three. I got Turtledoves, Blondie, and Strawberries and Cream. And all three are similar but different, and two of them I've used in this palette. So I think that that's really great. So I'm gonna zoom you in, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I will make sure to have all of these singles listed in the order that I place them, you know, to kind of mimic what's in the palette, like row by row. I will make sure to have them all in the description box in case you either want to shop for some of these shades or you have this in your collection and you want to build this palette along with me. I'd love that. All right, time for looks. So I am going to do 2 looks for you. I figure that way I can use more of the shades in here. I am just going to do a little like sped through music moment. I will make sure to have all the shades listed as I'm using them for you. So hopefully, like I said, either this inspires you to use your Sydney Grace shades, or you could even use this and, you know, use the coordinating shades in the Natasha Denona palette if you need some inspo that way. So hopefully it's helpful. Look one, obviously I went more of the like super neutral kind of smoky. I tried to do as many shadows as I could get out of this one. I mean, I'm definitely not gonna get all 15 in 2 looks, but I just wanted to give you a feel. So far, I'm really liking this. I will give you my thoughts at the end as to whether or not I think I'll end up splurging for the Natasha Denona one at some point. We will see. Let's do the second look. Maybe that'll make a difference. All right, 2 looks done. I love them both. I really love them both. I think that this sort of shows the versatility that you can get out of this palette. Well, out of this palette. And I really like it. And I don't know, how well I duped. I'm kind of wondering now, like I said, some of these Sydney Grace shades, they get pretty intense when they go on. The shade Together Forever might be a bit too warm. I could have gone with something more cool. But like I said, we're duping the vibes. It's not an exact thing. And I tried to use, I think I got, 5 or 6 shades on each eye look. So I feel pretty good about that. You'll have to let me know which of these looks that you like the most. And if you're inspired to do any of these in either your own duping palette or in the Natasha Denona palette, I would love to know. All right, let's get some final thoughts on this. All right, lovelies, this has been a lot of fun. I hope that you found this video helpful. First of all, I have to say, I'm definitely going to be leaving this palette out. I have so many palettes out right now that I'm wanting to get some use out of, but this one I definitely want to play with more. And I could see really digging into this coming into the fall. So I think I'm going to leave this out. I think that building these palettes is one great way to be able to get some use out of my singles. So this one will stay out on my vanity for a while, or at least still put together, even if I do put it away for a little bit. But I have to say, okay, so do I still have the itch to buy the Natasha Denona? Honestly, the only way I think I might end up picking this up, and I just saw that there must have been some sort of a glitch code on Ulta, because I was like, you know what? I have quite a few Ulta points to use. I could go ahead and do an order, but I'm gonna wait for an Ulta coupon to come along, and I heard that that it was working on everything and it's not anymore. But I could see at some point, taking some points to pick up the Natasha Denona palette. Is it something that I need right now? No, it's not. It's not even with using points, because I'm like, I'm gonna have fun with this. I'm gonna see how much I reach for it. Honestly, now that I've done this duping, maybe I'll watch a review or two to see what people are thinking of the palette, to see, a deeper dive into those new formulas. Obviously, that's gonna be a big part of it. If you are not new to my channel, you will know that I have a love and frustration relationship with some of the Natasha Denona formulas. I always wish that her shimmers were a little bit more shimmy. I think that Sydney Grace really hits that on the head. Like, I just think that you get these beautiful, like, foily shimmers, but obviously it's one type of formula. Now, sometimes I also feel like the Natasha Denona, is it the creamy mattes, the cream to powders? One of them I can find, it's a little bit less user-friendly, and So if you're a beginner with shadows, or especially like, because a lot of those shades end up being the deeper shades, I think they can get a little bit out of control. I can use them, but sometimes you just want to pull a palette out quick and like be like, boop, and run out the door. And those shades sometimes can get a little finicky to me. That's not everybody's opinion, but if you're watching this video, I would imagine that you're here for my opinion. So I don't find that at all with the Sydney Gray shades. You know, you get what you get, and they always are great quality, and you know, they are buildable, they're blendable. Some of them maybe aren't as deeply saturated as the Natasha Denona, but that could be a pro or a con depending on your makeup loves. So at the end of the day, might I still pick up the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette? Sure. Have I had a blast putting this together? Well, maybe not putting it together. That was a little stressful. But now that it's together, getting to play with it, having a beautiful curated set of shadows that I can play with. And since, you know, I mean, since this is my palette now, I obviously could put a couple more shades in here. I think that for me is one thing that this set, you know, I love a good, really light inner corner shade. I could see popping a couple like really interesting, you know, iridescence into this palette, and maybe that's what you're gonna get from that like glossy wet formula of Natasha's. I feel like I need something in this palette that is a little bit lighter in formula, because like here, well, which one did I use here? I think I used Versailles. This one, it's so metallic that on the inner corner, it isn't quite as light and bright. It's a little bit deeper, especially like if I'm not in the light. So I could see like popping a few here at the end, like maybe 3 little shades that are more of an iridescent, something that's a thinner formula that gives me a little bit more of that pop. But I could totally do that. Heck, I have a lot of room in this palette. I could just go crazy. I'm not planning on doing that, but I think that's it. So thank you so much, lovelies, for coming along this duping journey with me. Let me know down below. Did you pick up the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette? Are you going to try to dupe it on your own? And also let me know which of these looks that you like the best. I really like both. It's been a while since I've done like a fully neutral smoky eye, so I'm here for this, but I do love this one. So I really enjoy them both. Thank you so much, lovelies. I appreciate you all taking the time out of your day to spend it with me, and I will see you really soon.